This is Our Vision for the Future.
Oh, Vince, I think we're supposed to start the show. Vince, this is Jim Grant. We're so glad.
Jim?
I am so glad
Nice
to
to
have
meet
this
you.
program today. You know why? It's the first time I'm visiting with Brother Vince Olea, who happens to be running or directing, guiding the beautiful Santa Teresita Youth Conference Center up in Three Rivers. Now, last week, you remember your friend, Father Griesback?
Father John, yes.
We all love Father John.
Yes,
well, he
we
was
do.
here last week. He gave us a bit about the physicality of the facility, about the history of the Santa Teresita Planning Committee, all those values. But today, Vince, the test is on you to help clarify for us the real mission, the real goals and objectives, and the programs that you're going to be offering. But
I'll do
before
my
that,
best.
well, you'll do fine. The main thing we need to know, though, is why you're here. Now, you've done a lot of things. I'm going to read some of the things you've done. 20 years in youth ministry, it says passionately. In what way were you
Passionately.
passionate?
In what way? I think I really invested in the lives of young people. I
And
really
it-
wanted to hear who they are and move in that direction.
And it showed, because you wrote, you've done some wonderful Latino theology studies, you are a doctoral candidate at Barry University, you have worked with the homeless, you have instructed at Loyola Marymount, you've served ministries in San Diego and Los Angeles. I'm wondering, how did we luck out and get you over here, Vince?
Well,
What
yeah,
are you
thank
doing here?
Thank you for that introduction, Jim. I feel the opposite. I think the opposite is also true. I feel like I'm the lucky one. I feel like I'm very fortunate to be in this position.
And why are you so lucky to be here?
Well,
Why?
I'm fortunate because it's such an amazing opportunity to be a part of something from the ground zero, to build something good and great that was part of Bishop John Steinbach's vision that everybody contributed to, and all for young people. So I'm really looking forward to getting to know everybody in the diocese. It's such a culturally rich and diverse communities. And so I think I'm going to learn a lot and also be able to offer a lot of my experience.
You definitely will, and we've already seen the first fruits of your labors. We're very, very excited at what you and the team up at St. Anthony's is doing to make Santa Teresita become a true reality. Now, last week, as I said, Monsignor was here, gave us some real overview of the history. But now I'd like to ask you, the landscape in some way, out of which this mission statement that's guiding your work, what's the landscape out of which you drew that?
Yeah, right now we really are doing the heavy lifting. We're really dreaming out loud. We're really forming the mission. We're really looking at all the different programs we can do. But we really want to make sure that our mission was concise. And it simply is that we want to tend to the spiritual lives of young people in our diocese. And so even as I say that, I realize that really is a thick proposition. And there's a lot of layers to it. So if I might, I'd like to talk a bit about that landscape out of which that comes. And so the mission really starts with and is rooted in three basic realities. The first basic reality is that we are all relational beings. We're all created by God. We're created out of love for the purpose of love. And so we're all purpose and function to be in relationship. And it seems like the movement of life, the movement of God, is always that movement into a deeper relationality. So that's our first basic thing. The second thing is that we know that God is alive in the lives of every young person out there. Now I say that, Jim, because quite often, sometimes people feel like that there's an absence of God, there's an absence of spirituality in the lives of young people. And I think in that case, the tendency is, well, we need to insert God into your lives. But what we're saying is, no, God is already there beckoning them forth. And so they're already encountering God, they're already having experiences, they're already asking the great questions, and they're already discovering who they are in relationship to God and their community.
You know, I'm going to stop you right there in your steps here. That's really insightful to hear that your whole direction is positive and not like, remedial, that you're going to get what guided you to come up with that principle to stress that God is alive and not we're going to put God there?
Well,
That's awesome.
a part of me wants to say, well, I learned it in school, which I did. I learned it in catechism, which I did. but just in being in the midst of young people. Yeah. I think it really came out of seeing the beauty that they are and the fact that they are great spiritual beings, and they hunger and thirst just like we all do, and they know there's a God and God is within them, just like we all want to know that and want to experience that. So yeah, that is our starting point.
And the third principle in this landscape.
Sure. That third reality is that when we're talking about things like discovery and relationality and conscious awareness of and participation in this reality, we're talking about our life journey, the journey that you and I are on, that we've been on for a while, so that we know that the work of retreats, the work of Santa Teresita, the work of a youth center, it can't be the total sum of someone's journey. It can't be the total sum of someone's spiritual life, but it can show up in the midst of our lifelong journey. And that's where we really place the idea of retreats. So if you can give me just one more point is that then retreats at their really basic form, a great retreat is going to facilitate an encounter with that reality, with the reality of who we are, which is that our God is absolutely in love with our young people and beckons them forth every day, and that they are connected, just as we are. God is in love with us, and that we are connected. And so what we're hoping to do in our retreat work is to facilitate it such where there's a real experience and movement in that. We want to have that experience, and we want to be moved. And so that's important. So we want to facilitate ways where our young people could see that reality, can touch it, can taste it, can experience it, can have a deep reflection upon that, and then could start to imagine, what is my life like? What can it be like, and what is it like connected to God and to each other? And so this idea of then that within a retreat experience that we are moved is really important. So just let me end this phase with that.
This is great.
The idea of being moved, and we're not necessarily talking about being emotionally moved, although that's important, but we're talking about once the retreat is over and you come down from the mountain and you re-enter into your daily journey of your spiritual life, the movement is such is that we can then move deeper into relationships. We could move toward healing. We could move toward reconciliation, toward compassion, toward participation in the life of our faith community, toward a greater thirst for growth and knowledge in our faith, toward accompaniment, towards all of those things. And so we look at our work up there on the mountains as part of this bigger complexity that we might call the life of God.
You know, this is very exciting, Vince.
It is exciting.
And this was only the first part of our three elements we wanted to talk about, but so much under that topic of the mission. Mm-hmm. The mission seems to be really multifaceted, but then very, very simple. You're positively going to mine the goodness that youth have and have them almost celebrate their relationship with God, yes, and how their life's journey is going to be something that will be a continuing experience of grace.
Yes.
I mean, you have this vision and mission right at the beginning, before the buildings are up yet. Mm-hmm. The mission is clear.
Yes.
Awesome. Now, one thing about a mission that we'll all admit who have done mission statements, it's always highfalutin, they always sound great, mm-hmm, and they're always very awe-inspiring. But then comes the nitty-gritty of deciding what are the goals and objectives, yes, that might flesh it out. Mm-hmm. So one thing that you may want to do for us, and Greg will help us by putting up on the screen the famous goals and objectives. So there they are. Thanks, Greg. Now, out of these goals, there's many. We're not going to talk about all of them, sure, but what would be the first one you want to already have people get in their mind?
Sure. And I think one of the things that I've been working on, and I'll call it a living document, is a 3-year plan. And so part of that 3-year plan is, and it's specific to ministry because there's financial plans and different things like that, but this 3-year plan has about 20 goals and objectives.
Wow.
Today we're going to talk about maybe 5 or 6 of them that we think are important and that the community that's watching this show can know about. And so the first one is environment. One of our first goals is that we want to have a safe, faith-filled, youth-friendly environment. And we think that's important. And I know Father John talked about safe environment. And safe environment is a very high priority in our diocese. And it's a high priority for us. It's for the protection of our children. It's for their safety and well-being. And so we are not only in compliance, but sure, we want to support all of that. So that's something important.
So you'd be in good connection with Teresa Dominguez
Yes,
and the
yes.
whole ministry that she's guiding.
Yes, and they are helping us with all our policies and everything to make sure that we are all on the same page and moving forward.
I think Msgr even explained the very construction
Yeah,
of the
the
building.
Construction was built.
Remind us how even facility construction.
In the facilities, but there's not a lot of hidden corners. So when you're doing youth work, you really want to eliminate any danger spot or any spot that cannot be supervised. So that's definitely a plus. The way the dorms were constructed is that the adults, chaperones, are able to supervise without needing to be in the facility itself. And so it really is built for that, that maximumness.
So that's even one of 20. And
one of many. And even with environment, though, Jim, the holding of sacred space, the holding of that environment is also consistent with that particular goal.
Yeah.
Because that's really important. So that means that all of us need to be centered, need to be moving in a direction, need to be prayerful, need to be mindful of all of those things.
Now, a second goal seems to be echoing something that came up already big time in the first effort of the mission being cracked open. Relationship. How are you going to find that a goal? How is that a goal and an objective?
We wanted to make sure that we were in relationship. What we'd like to do is be in relationship with every Catholic parish and school in the diocese. Within 3 to 5 years, really start to establish that and move that. We know that we can't be of service to people that we are not in relationship with.
Exactly.
So we know that that's important. And I think later on, as we talk about leadership and leadership development and the partnership program, we'll start to see what we mean by relationship. But just to say that we're not just a place where you can come up to Three Rivers and be a part of. We want to go to you. So I'm asking parishes and leaders, please invite me over. I'd love to come to your community, to talk to you, to see you, to talk about things. And so that's a way that we want to be in relationship. We'll come to you, you come to us, and we'll start to build.
I can see that so much in our own ministry at Channel 49, the whole need that we want to be a ministry, but unless we relate to the parishes and the schools in some constructive way, it's just not going to work.
Right.
And you already see that already as goal number 2.
Right. We see that as a high priority, yes.
You know, we've already used up half our time, Vince.
Okay.
And you thought this was not going to be easy. This is so easy. You know, we're going to be back in 1 minute because Vince has a lot of other things to tell us about this wonderful Santa Teresita Youth Conference Center. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Our vision for the future will be right back. To thank Ventura TV Video Appliance Center for their support of our vision for the future. Ventura TV Video Appliance Center, the local choice for brand name appliances and electronics since 1951.
Hey, we're back again, second half of the program. If you missed the first half, you really missed something worth seeing. So you're going to want to see this on its repeat performance. But right now, we're here with Vince Olea, who is the director of the Santa Teresita Youth Conference Center up in Three Rivers. He's telling us right now some of the goals. There's many, many goals and objectives, but Vince is going to unpack the ones that he thinks you viewers, and me too, first of all, need to know right off the top. Vince, one thing I'd like you to tell us, it's off the point, but it's very important. Tell us something about yourself and your doctoral studies and how they have helped make you the thinker and the minister that you are, your graduate work at Barry University.
Okay. You know, I've always been one, I think, to want to learn and grow in that aspect by looking at other people's theology and thoughts and things like that. But then I've always pondered, well, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for ministry? And what does that mean on a very practical level? In my study at Barry University, it's a doctoral study to be a doctor in ministry, but the emphasis is Hispanic ministry and theology.
This is great.
And so what I'm really loving about that is I'm really able to study and look at all kinds of different approaches. So, For example, a narrative theology, the idea that our story, our own narrative within it is so imbued with the life of God that it is its own context, its own way of looking at the person and at the community. So that when we look at young people, then a lot of what we want to do is create forms for them to share their own story. And now we know a young person isn't just going to sit here and say, here's my story. So we need to look at artistic ways, at theater, at different ways with the arts and all kinds of forms where they get to express who they are, including the joys and the pains and their understanding and encounters with God and all of that. And so that's just one field of study that I've really enjoyed that I think could be of some great practical use.
And it is, and it's showing in the first half of the program, the way you are conceptualizing this and the way you're sharing your excitement at directing Santa Teresita. Thank you so much. The third point, believe it or not, is again, echoing back, moving back, to develop retreats, programs, and activities that bring our mission to life. Anything else to say about that third goal?
The only thing I want to say about that is mainly that it's growing. It's something that is going to become. I think at this early stage, we're at the dreaming phase of what can we do and what can we offer. So we have this huge board of all kinds of different ideas. Some of them I'll share in a minute. But that we want to look at that and say, what can we do now and what can we do in year 2, year 3, year 4, and really build where we do have something and are able to offer a really expansive view of encounters and enrichment.
And the fourth one, believe it or not, seems to follow logically to make Santa Teresita Youth Conference Center available. Available in what way to whom?
Yeah, I think access is very important. The community, the diocese has invested so much in making this happen that we know that the economic situations of a lot of the communities is such that retreats might be a luxury and might be something that people can afford. And we don't want that to be an obstacle at all. So we really put that on us. It's sort of a shared reality that we want to have too, that we want to figure out ways where we can make that happen and make sure that that's not an obstacle.
You know, that's great. It piggybacks on what Father John said last week, being very conscious of the financial expense of the place and how they've saved money and how they're going to continually save money because they want this to be something that the diocese understands as a complete blessing and not an expense. And retreats, they should be open to everyone, and you're going to do your best to make them available.
We hope so, yes.
Good
that is definitely
for you. Now, the fifth point among many, leadership development. Now, that's a whole kettle of fish.
It is.
Unpack leadership development.
It is. I think the whole idea is when we talked about the mission, we talked about the journey being lifelong. We know that we at Santa Teresita, that we in and of ourselves are leaders, but we could look at it as leaders for a whole area, for a whole diocese. Leadership development in this respect is we want to invest in the leaders in the local communities so that within each parish, there are not just adults, but young people who are right now already leaders. While they might not identify themselves in that way, they are. And so we know that if at all, any of the work that we do is to have any long-term effect, it's dependent on and it relies on the leaders within that community. And so when we get to talk about the leadership or the partnership program that we're developing, that feeds right into that idea.
You know, this also seems to go right along with that second part of the mission, that you're going to capitalize, build on, and really accentuate the fact that God is alive in the youth.
Yes, that's a great
point.
You're
giving credit to what's there. There's a lot of good.
That's that, and just to say about that point is, then the young leaders within each community become a voice for that community, a voice that's able to articulate who they are, what their needs are, what their social context is, what their dreams are, what their joys are, and then within that, then we're allowed to be able to be a part of that and to walk with that, and that's important.
You know, a sixth goal is perfect because while we're filming this program, the World Series is on, just so you know. But it's still tied 3-3 back in the day when we're watching the show, so it all happened now. But to create teams, okay, that was
All right,
tie-in teams.
that's the tie-in.
So to create teams, Vince, what kind of teams,
Right.
who's going to win?
It really
What's
is on my experience. I've learned a few things, maybe just a few, and one is that if it relies on me, then it's not going to happen. Meaning that it can't just be a Vince venture or a venture that's just about what we want to do up at Santa Teresita, but it needs to be able to collect teams from the different communities who might be experts in different areas so that we can develop certain programs. So for example, right now, we have a great science and nature camp team made up of people throughout the diocese, of professors and teachers and rangers. And so the idea is to gather, to think about what we want, but think about it to the point of where it becomes, okay, how are we actually going to execute this and make this practical? What are we going to do on day 1 and day 2 and day 3? So we want to develop teams in all kinds of different areas, obviously in leadership, in spiritual growth, in confirmation, leadership that has to do with the arts, maybe working with at-risk kids, and so in all kinds of different areas we could do that.
And one more key word that is all over the place on your chart here, to develop and sustain a volunteer corps.
Sure.
Tell us about the volunteers. I know they've done a lot already to start. They've built.
Right.
Build
Volunteers are all over and will continue to be, and we're always in reliance of them, and that's important. So we know that as we start to put together retreats and people start to come up, there are certain things that every retreat is going to need, basic things. And it's so basic as we need to develop a list of those who are RNs.
That's right.
Or maybe even firefighters or EMTs who can come up and be with us and serve as that first aid personnel who's there. We need lifeguards. We have a pool there. Safety is important. And so if we had a list of volunteer lifeguards, we'd love to have volunteers in the area of transportation, in the area of camp counselors, in the area of trail guides. And so, yeah, any type of volunteer we can have, we want to create a list and to be able to pull from that list as the needs arise. So that's really important to what we do.
You know, before we even go on to the very next point, if we could put up your contact information at this point.
Sure.
So you could talk about when they see this contact information for Vince Olea, if somebody wants to be a volunteer, they should be in touch with you immediately.
Yes.
Like the sooner
yes.
the better.
The sooner the better,
like,
yes.
Not now because he's on TV, but some other time. Call him or email him.
It can be now. Operators are standing by.
Operators are standing by waiting. And in fact, why don't we see that right now, Greg? How to reach Vince. And Vince, tell us what will probably happen when they reach you at this information here.
Well, anybody who, anything that you've heard so far that you've liked and want to be a part of, please call us. And we love to talk to you. We love to visit with you. We love to invite you up to our place.
Great.
And to see how we could fit and work together. And so that would be the main thing that I would say, that anybody that wants to call in.
Are you
call
better
us.
with a phone call at 561-4595, or do you really like getting emailed at vince@santanthonyretreat.org? What do you like?
Emails are easier. Phone calls require me to be at the desk when the call happens, but emails I can get and respond in different ways. But either way.
And look how easy that is. Vince, this is Vince right here, at santanthonyretreat.org. Awesome email address, easily remembered, and Vince, very memorable. So you're going to want to do that because you want volunteers and you want the viewers to be partners with you.
Yes.
Speaking of which, we're going to briefly be able to mention some of the programs and retreats. Like, for example, whom are you trying to address during these retreats? Who is wonderful programming for?
Age-wise, we're looking at anything from grade school to junior high to high school, young adults, college age, and family. So we are looking at that full spectrum.
So there's really nothing off the chart except maybe seniors. I mean, so,
well, you never know.
So then you're going to see
Seniors are
Monsignor
always-
John for that.
You
But
can, yes.
in other words, the retreat house is covering everything. But the Youth Conference Center seems to go right up through families. So I'm sure you're looking at revolutionary
families
programs
are
for
really the
families.
hub of that relational activity. So we definitely want to focus on that, maybe even in our summer camps and things like that.
And then what are some of the program ideas or themes? You've got about a minute or two, Vince. Are there some
Sure.
of these ideas that are milling about that you're just brainstorming, dreaming? What are some of the topics?
I think we want definitely to be able to focus on leadership development, on spiritual growth, and there's a lot of ways to look at spiritual growth. We want to use the arts in as many ways as possible as we can. We want to be able to look at the life of our young people and say, yeah, I think they too want to be energized and want to be connected to their community, and even in a way of social justice and healing and action. So those are some areas. We also want to tend to any of the wounds that are out there, and we're all wounded and we all have that, and so anybody that might be, like I mentioned, either sort of at risk or in recovery, any of those areas we want to be able to look at. And so and then just with the time left, if there is time,
Half a minute.
our partnership program.
Yes.
We want to work with communities in developing their leadership by helping to co-facilitating a retreat with them. We'll work with you, we'll facilitate it together, we'll help grow and train your leaders, we'll work on it together, we'll pull it off together, we'll have a great experience, and then we're in relationship for as long as we can be, and then parishes can connect with other parishes as the leadership grows.
You know, this is all going to happen, and we could put up, Greg, if you don't mind, Vince Olea's contact information. Be in touch with Vince. Have confidence that this is a wonderful project you're going to want to participate in. It's for the benefit of youth from grade school through family dynamic. It's 24/7 open. He's ready to work with you. Please participate in this dream. Make it a reality. God bless.